So Roman Reigns, who is paired with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman, that is your first pick. So that means that his title stays on SmackDown and the new world title will be a Raw championship.
Correct. Yeah. Stays on SmackDown, stays on the big Friday show. Yeah.
Cody Rhodes is drafted to Raw. And then Bianca Belair is drafted to SmackDown, your Raw Women's Champion. And the final pick of the opening round, Becky Lynch, staying on Raw.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if there's that much interesting here, other than the fact that Cody and Roman are going to be on separate brands. So those of you that are hoping for Cody to be chasing Roman's championship, you might have to wait a bit longer. This doesn't necessarily mean he'll never face Roman again. It could just be their way of delaying this program, or it could be their way of completely, keeping these two separate forever. So we don't know, but in the near future, you're not going to see a Roman Reigns versus Cody match.
And Cody can fight for. What do you think about the idea of Cody being on the show with the other title, which is what this thing is going to be referred to as?
Yeah, I think it would upset a lot of people if he finishes his story by winning this other championship and not Roman's. But again, I think
he's also got to be on a show where, in theory, everyone on that show has to be putting over that title as the big championship. And for Cody, it seems like such a disconnect to be putting all of you have to be talking about like, this is your goal now, is this new championship. And
what's that going to take? It's going to take Cody to come out and cut a kick-ass promo. That's all. I'm not really concerned about that. Yeah, he kind of set his sights on winning the championship that his dad never won, but all it takes is for him to give us a valid reason that we can buy in story, and that changes his motivation. Again, I really do feel like Cody versus Roman is a threat that they can pick up maybe closer to WrestleMania time, but for the next year, keep him on Raw. Let him chase this other championship. Let him be the guy for this particular brand separate from Roman.
The Street Profits are going to SmackDown, so you are keeping one couple together on SmackDown.
I mean, they really teased on Monday. All these teams can split up. Like anything can happen in this draft. Teams, in fact,
it tells you how planned out that whole aspect of the draft was on Monday night when Corey Graves was continually hitting you over the head that this could be the last time we see the Street Profits team up.
Yeah. So I guess on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, they decided, okay, we're going to keep all the teams together anyway.
Then they announced Imperium, including Gunther, going to Raw. And I would say this would be surprising that Gunther and the IC title are going to Raw as opposed to being on the show that is not going to have a regular appearance by its champion.
Okay. I never thought of that. Well, I mean, maybe it's an excuse to elevate the United States Championship. For as much value as they built into Gunther, eventually he's going to lose the championship. And I think maybe it's more important to just be able to showcase Gunther and Imperium on a different network in front of a slightly different audience.
Yeah, and you do have that three-way match. So tonight, of the people that were in that match, Lashley was drafted to SmackDown. So it's not a case of Austin Theory has to show up on SmackDown. You could certainly get the belt onto Lashley, and Reed will be drafted on Monday as well. So they have options but obviously the U.S. title, you would assume, shows up on SmackDown. As will Edge, who has been drafted to SmackDown, and Matt Riddle to Raw.
Yeah, so, with Edge, are we looking at Edge versus Roman again, possibly as a program? Is it fresh enough at this point? Edge has said he wants to chase championships, and are you interested in another Edge Roman program?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they did the Mania match with Danielson, and then they did the singles match with the two of them.
I think there's been enough time that you could probably tell a good story, especially if it's like Edge's last run. He's out to finish his story. And we'll see if he has a better result. Riddle on Raw, a lot of it's wide open for him. Like a Riddle versus Gunther match, I think would be a whole lot of fun.
So Bobby Lashley is going to SmackDown. Drew McIntyre to Raw. The OC, all four of them, AJ Styles, Anderson, Gallows, and Michin, are going to SmackDown, and The Miz staying on Raw.
Yeah.
So, I say staying as though I'm really confident that The Miz was on Raw. I will assume he was, but could easily have been on SmackDown too. So I give that caveat.
He was a Raw guy, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody in this crop was technically switching, other than The Miz. So you have Drew coming back onto Raw from SmackDown. I'm guessing, what do the Banger Brothers stay as a thing together or not? So, Lashley potentially moving to SmackDown with the United States Championship, and then it also meant the return of AJ Styles to SmackDown as well. He's been a guy who's been kept away, well, technically, for quite a while as well.
He's been off TV all year. He's been out since that December house show in Toronto. So
I meant kept away from SmackDown. But again, who's keeping track?
Yeah, it's people at SmackDown erupted at the appearance of AJ. They haven't seen him in years.
So what? Lashley potentially opens him up to a match against Roman Reigns. Is that interesting to you? They haven't had a singles match together since 2018. So
yeah, it's a match you can do. You're gonna have to do some of your work to build up some of these challengers, and given the fact that Becky is on Raw, I think that would certainly tell you that Rollins is most likely staying on Raw. And to me, he was one of the more interesting non-Cody opponents for Roman.
He's also been teased for the new championship, like they had an eye.
They did do that, so yeah. He is probably going in that direction. So when you're looking at it, I mean, yeah, you have Edge, you have Lashley, you'll have some more coming out of Monday's show. I don't know. It's like, if we're looking immediately to that Saudi Arabia show, I mean, like, what jumps out at you? Like, you would think that it will be a title match on that Saudi Arabia show. And I don't know.
Roman will be on the show. Roman will be on the show. They'll crown a new champion. The tag titles are another story, of course. Whether or not Sami and Owens will be on the show, probably not.
So SmackDown gets Damage Control, all three of them. Raw gets Shinsuke Nakamura, and Road Dogg notes how much he loves his theme song. And then Sean says that this is a hard one for me. Elba Fire and Isla Dawn, the NXT Tag Champions. And Michael Cole notes that, yes, Elba Fire and Isla Dawn are coming to SmackDown.
I think I heard Isla, but sure.
Was it Isla?
I don't know. One of the two.
Gosh. And then the fourth one, Road Dogg goes, well, Sean, I don't know if you're going to like this one either, because if you lost your smile once, you might lose it again, because we've drafted Indy Hartwell to Raw. So, man, they just have taken the champions, the female champions, out of NXT. And there's Indy Hartwell in her walking boot to get everyone caught up to speed on the supplemental draft over the weekend. SmackDown got Hit Row and Lacey Evans. Raw got the Viking Raiders and Valhalla, Dexter Lumis, Candice LeRae, Maximum Male Models, Natalia, Apollo Crews, Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, Zoe Stark, and JD McDonough. And our free agents are Omos, Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, and Von Wagner, I guess with Brock as well. So these are the most powerful people coming out of the draft here on the screen. And Scott Stanford's look says it all.
I didn't know free agency was an option. Now, was it an option, or were they just simply not picked? How did? Well,
the story was that Brock and MVP negotiated the free agency for their sides, okay. And conventional wisdom states the other three were forgotten about and undrafted.
I mean, I think it's kind of interesting, because I don't know if there's reason for any of them to not have a side, other than just they simply don't know what to do with any of them.
From a logic standpoint, Von Wagner makes no sense. Like, he's been called up to not be drafted. It's like no one wants him, but he's been called up. By who? Like, how is he a free agent as opposed to Wes Lee?
Right. Like, why couldn't anybody from NXT declare free agency?
Like, they're all technically... Yeah, I don't.
And I guess what's Ali and Ziggler's story? Like, there's a huge bidding war over the both of them. They just can't choose. They don't like any of the offers. They're just testing the waters.
So the first round, Rhea Ripley is the first draft. So the SmackDown Women's Champion is drafted to Raw. Did you notice Bianca Belair was back to being the Raw Women's Champion tonight after being named the SmackDown Women's Champion on Friday?
Well, I mean, she is the SmackDown Champion. I guess.
I'm saying Bianca though.
Right. Okay. Don't make me explain this, John. You know the reason.
Austin Theory drafted to SmackDown with the U.S. title. So you have Theory and Lashley on SmackDown and Bronson Reed on Raw going into Backlash. So that is that. Seth Rollins drafted to Raw, and Charlotte Flair drafted to SmackDown.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there were any real surprises coming out of this first round. Brands getting the remaining championships and then the biggest stars. I think in kayfabe, I would say the ranking makes sense. You'd want all the championships on your show, except I suppose
draft. To me,
Seth Rollins and Charlotte Flair clearly take precedent over any of the tag team championships, and I think that's. Does
that make sense? You get two people if you and the tag titles. Like that to me would be the pick versus Charlotte, who's like on hiatus.
I really do feel like these tag titles, both of the sets of tag titles, are probably able to cross either brand for now, and for that reason, maybe not as much incentive.
Okay,
to draft
this is all speculation. They can change these rules whenever they want, and when they need them on a show, they will put them on the show. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are going to Raw. The Usos to SmackDown. The Judgment Day, which is Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Dominic, to Raw. So they are keeping all of them together with Rhea Ripley drafted earlier in the show. And then the LWO. This is 5 picks you get. Like, how many people, like if the NWO in WCW was in a draft, could you draft like 20 people? If they were all aligned,
and I mean, if they filled the proper paperwork to be drafted together, then
like this is your Moneyball pick. You get 5 people here with their merch numbers.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know though, because okay, in my head, if we're talking kayfabe here, I mean, every single one of these people is a different salary amount. Okay, you're paying for these 5 members of the LWO. Do you want that bloat on your roster?
I don't know. Maybe they come as a package deal. Like, do you get all their merch money?
I mean, that would suck for this, Joaquin Wilde. How much of a cut do you think he's getting from this LWO? It's not going to be like, a fifth for every single one of them.
I'm sure the WWE has figured out.
You think you think Joaquin Wilde is making as much as Rey Mysterio?
Depends if he's, if he trademarked that original ROH logo and is getting paid in perpetuity for that logo.
It's probably not. No.
Okay. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez are drafted to Raw with the tag titles. Asuka is drafted to SmackDown. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods to Raw, and the Brawling Brutes to SmackDown.
Mm-hmm. So this means Drew and Sheamus are split up.
Correct.
Their deals are not coterminous.
No,
or maybe it is. I don't know what the term really
co-terminated.
Means. I really don't think any of these drafts mean a whole lot for the tag teams again, because I believe the belts are free to move back and forth. But I thought
they should. I mean, it would be wise for these shows to have that flexibility to.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately they do. They can put whoever they want on any show, but they should have that with the titles.
Curious what they do with Asuka, because I believe Isla Dawn does the Miss gimmick as well. So maybe there's potential with the both of them on SmackDown doing something with creating some other factions, perhaps with some of the women now.
So Trish Stratus is going to Raw, Karrion Kross to SmackDown, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler to Raw, and LA Knight to SmackDown.
Mm-hmm. I feel like they gave LA Knight sort of like the profiled final spot here, and you had Graves acknowledge on commentary that his popularity has been growing. So I think they might be certainly catching on and maybe considering starting sowing the seeds of a babyface turn for LA Knight. But just the fact that he was even one of the featured drafted numbers here and not a part of the supplemental draft, I think tells you that they see a lot in him and we're likely to get something a bit more. I mean, they're also seemingly pretty high up on Karrion Kross as well, which kind of surprises me, but there you go. And then Ronda Rousey, of course, number 15 on a night 2. So
a pretty throwaway, pairing that we're talking about a group of Karrion Kross and LA Knight mixed with Ronda Rousey. I mean, does that not tell you everything right there?
Yeah. About Ronda, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. No, her stock has fallen considerably. Absolutely.
So Braun Strowman and Ricochet go to Raw, Shotzi to SmackDown, Bronson Reed to Raw, and Pretty Deadly are alive and they are going to SmackDown, and we get confirmation that they pulled themselves out of the river, and they were at the Performance Center reacting to their drafting. So that's good.
With the people that put them into the river sitting next to them.
You know what? Let bygones be bygones. Okay. Haven't you ever drowned somebody?
Yeah. Anyway, happy for them. I think they're a very complete tag team for the moment they hit NXT, and I think they will actually be very popular here on the main roster in quick fashion. So, fashion, no pun intended, I guess. I kind of look at them as maybe like a counterpart to the Maximum Male Models. They'll be on SmackDown, so probably like their version of like the comedy tag team. But they're a team that I can actually see winning the championships.
From Owens and Zayn?
No.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not yet. Not in the immediate. No.
If they split the titles and these titles mean less, they'll be in the running.
Sure.
Otis and Gable are going to Raw. The Meat Mountain, Rick Boogs, is going to SmackDown. Katana Chance and Caden Carter get drafted to Raw. And then Cameron Grimes, who's been ready forever, gets drafted to SmackDown. He's been off NXT for months at this point. So he gets drafted. And then, as Wei mentioned, we got more NXT picks after Raw.
Yeah, really great to see the call-ups here in Chance and Carter and Cameron Grimes. Of course, we had talked about what this means for the NXT Tag Team Championships. Did they know that Chance and Carter were also going to be picked when they made that match? Find out, I guess. But Cameron Grimes, why wouldn't they have had JBL make that announcement? Come on.
Yeah, I guess you could have done that for Graves did point out the similarities between JBL and Grimes' character as well.
Let's get into some of these supplemental draft picks here. This one comes to us, of course, from Raw Talk and also from @CeeNoEvil, the man who always has his finger on the pulse here. Final draft picks. Raw gets Dana Brooke, Johnny Gargano.
How does one brand get so many in this? Like, how does the supplemental draft work?
It's because Raw has so many people, and
I understand. I'm trying to keep it logical with what we've just seen. Okay.
So last year they did the what is it, 3-2, right? Ratio for Raw picks, and I think that was always a bit awkward on TV.
They just even the numbers on the supplemental.
They're hiding it basically off
from from like an actual standpoint. This is a lot better. I'm just stating from the but let's pull up the list again. So
Dana Brooke, Johnny Gargano, part of the supplemental draft. Nikki Cross finished her dissertation, got supplemental drafted to Raw. Los Lotharios, if you remember, they're still around. And are they not from Puerto Rico? Oh wait, no, they're not. They're not. Okay, well. So anyway, no involvement from them as far as we know. Akira Tozawa, Piper Niven, Xia Li, Tegan Knox, Emma, Riddick Moss, her boyfriend, Odyssey Jones, Indus Sher, and Jinder Mahal, all to Raw. SmackDown gets Tamina and Grayson Waller. So 2 for
I hope they give Grayson Waller several weeks of like vignettes and promos. That guy is going to do really well if he's given a fair shot, which if they're drafting him, I think they would. That's that's a big gap that they lose in NXT has lost. Braun Breaker was not drafted, so I guess that was the interesting one, and maybe they want him to play this heel role for an extended period. But that's a significant loss, losing Grayson Waller at the NXT level. Like there are people very high on him,
but he's ready, and what's the point of NXT but to get a guy ready, and he clearly is ready. I think interesting that he was part of the supplemental draft and not made a bigger deal out of, on the show itself, but it's never really an indicator of, I think, somebody's success. Like if I recall, wasn't Alexa Bliss, ranked very high in her draft, and look at what she ended up becoming, right? So
who are the free agents that were listed there?
All right. So the big ones here, the free agents, Baron Corbin, Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander, Elias, and Zion Quinn.
Dude, Zion Quinn. It would be very frustrating for an NXT performer when, no offense to some of these guys, but when you have Zion Quinn, Von Wagner, and Odyssey Jones that are getting the call up over so many others.
But again, it doesn't necessarily mean much. Again, like you mentioned with the Braun Breaker, it means that they probably need Braun first of all, and they want to see him develop. Maybe they have higher expectations for a lot of these guys. Whereas Zion Quinn, maybe they feel like, hey, we're not necessarily like a year here is not necessarily going to make them any more ready.
Well, it makes a difference for some of these performers when you're on
the money. The money matters
versus
for sure.
a main roster contract. I don't think they care about the reasoning behind it. Yeah, I don't know if you were a free agent. Like I don't know. We haven't like there's just some people here that they're going nowhere. And that's sort of where you see things.
Like a Shelton and Cedric, at this point, I don't really know. Like same with Mustafa Ali and Dolph Ziggler. Are they just looking to have like jobbers that you can put on either show, you know, whenever you need somebody to get an impressive win over somebody else? I'm not really sure about this whole free agency thing. Corbin, I suppose maybe you can use it as part of a story of him trying to get a job, like the Heath Slater thing.
Done the stories with him at this point. Just some observations here. Looking on the Raw side, they are very babyface heavy. So listen to this. This is your babyface roster. You have Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Matt Riddle, Shinsuke Nakamura. I would say of those, you would have to be looking at least one person turning. I would say Drew McIntyre would be a candidate for a turn because on the heel side, you've got Gunther, the Judgment Day, and Bronson Reed as your top heels, which is fine. And you also have Brock kind of floating in and out when you're doing like a big pay-per-view or program. But I could certainly see it, like that's a very heavy end for the baby faces, but this is sort of your division for creating this new championship.
Yeah. I think we can look forward to some heel turns here. I mean, I think that it's great news for JD McDonough, who, you know, it's like a wide open lane there if they want to be serious with him to, you know, push him as like a serious heel potentially.
I would say Gunther is poised to, like, they need, like, he is by default, you could argue, the throwing out Brock because he's not a regular every week. Gunther is your top heel on this show at the moment.
Totally, yeah. And I'm sure like you'll see maybe some sort of free agency type of thing with a Brock Lesnar around from time to time, maybe even an Omos sticking around from time to time as well. So, but I think for Drew, it's time to we see a different version of him.
Yeah, for the women on Raw, like obviously Becky Lynch is your top babyface, and then you do have Raquel and Liv Morgan. Those are like your top end ones. On the heel side, there's a lot to work with here. Rhea Ripley has the title. Trish Stratus, who will continue the feud with Becky. Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler once Ronda's healthy. And then you have like Zoe Stark coming up. You have Katana Chance and Kaden Carter coming up. You have Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, like a ton of heel women on that side of things. And Becky can only work with one person at a time. So I would hopefully that they're going to develop some other baby faces, which that could mean that Raquel and Liv being on this show, like they have more than enough teams to be programmed with. If it's with Ronda and Baszler, if it's a short thing with Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, there's quite a bit there on the women's side.
Yeah.
And Indy Hartwell is also on this show as well. So maybe her and Candice are going to be paired together.
I'm not as optimistic about maybe the treatment of the women, just because I haven't been given that much reason to be optimistic. I mean, typically, if you're not involved in a feud with Becky, if you're not involved in a feud with Bianca, there's really not a whole lot for you, and that includes the tag team champion. So until they can maybe prove, you know, otherwise, I'm just not going to get that excited.
And just a quick look at SmackDown. So on the babyface side, we have Bobby Lashley, Rey Mysterio, Edge, AJ Styles, Santos Escobar as your top end baby faces. On the heel side, you have the Bloodline, Austin Theory, Karrion Kross, Grayson Waller, LA Knight, Sheamus. So, you know, a decent mix here. How would you state the babyface side looks as it pertains to opponents for Roman Reigns with like Lashley, Ray, Edge, AJ as your top ones? I
actually feel like they found a way to like find some pretty fresh opponents here. Like I'd be most excited about an AJ Styles Roman Reigns match. I think Edge at this point like can feel fresh, especially if you're doing like an Edge like sort of like last chance at the championship type of story. Bobby Lashley too, you know, of course they have unfinished business that they'll probably get back to at this point. And then beyond that, who do we have? Austin Theory, maybe a bit slim pickings after that. But then of course we also have the Usos, who are currently involved in a story, and maybe a Jey Uso Roman Reigns matches in the future this year as well.
in a weird way, I do sort of see Austin Theory and Grayson Waller competing for the same spot. And
totally.
I think that Grayson Waller can come in here, and it'll be interesting to see who he is booked with first. If he's given someone big like a Ray, or like where he has to start, because he could very quickly ascend. Of course, there is kind of a limit on the heel side when you're on the Bloodline brand.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how he is in 6 months from now. And then just quickly on the women's side, so the SmackDown has Bianca Belair, Asuka, Zelina Vega, and Michin. The heels, Charlotte Flair, who's out, Damage Control, Elba Fire, and Isla Dawn, who, I mean, they could be coming in as heels or baby faces, depending on where they go with Shotzi and Lacey Evans. So not the most depth on the heel end with Charlotte gone. And I would say even with Charlotte in there, it's sort of, her and Belair is obviously a big match to do down the road.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these matches we've kind of seen, right? Asuka, Charlotte. I don't know, depending on if Zelina really looks great this Saturday, maybe that's a match you can go to. But I think Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are like, if the lane's wide open for them to really kind of like, get people's attention and to do something with it. Tamina being a part of this draft as well, maybe it means that she'll have something. She's on the same roster as the Bloodline. Maybe that would be a way of boosting her with that sort of attachment. So yeah.
Can you see them trying again with Shotzi and or Lacey Evans, like giving them the latest?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Like look at what Bianca Belair has like gone through, at least on TV, right? So yeah, I think fresh people for her to beat is always going to be a thing.
All right. That was the 2023 draft. This will be a fun list to look back at 6 months from now and see what is your expectation level on how disciplined they are going to be this time around on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being we're going to see no cross-pollination till WrestleMania next year. That's the big interpromotional match of next WrestleMania.
I think that'll be really difficult. Like, so maybe a good question would be, okay, how long do we're going to see people jump shows. Okay. We're going to see trades. How long until they don't even mention the concept of trading or this sort of like wild card day or whatever, and they just have people like swap back and forth freely? I'm going to say they're going to give it like a good 6 month try. Okay. I mean, that already sounds incredibly optimistic, but what does that take us to? Survivor Series, maybe.
Yeah, I'd go less than that. I think as soon as it's football season, September. Okay. As soon as Monday Night Football's coming back, I think that's when they're going to feel the need to jumpstart things. I really don't care. I think this is still a much stronger company when you don't have this brand split. So I'm not one that's championing like distinct rosters.
I would like to see like, maybe they formally announce that, okay, after the Rumble, the borders are open. Anybody can cross, and that also like in a way creates a bit of a playoff season for WWE, where like in Major League Baseball you get the National League teams mixing with. I haven't watched baseball in years, so like, do the teams mix? No, I guess they don't mix until afterwards. But anyway, it would create maybe some specialness attached to some of these shows where you get to see people jump back and forth. But can they be disciplined enough to get all the way to January where that would actually feel special? So yeah, no, you're right to be cynical.
Yeah, there were also several notable names that were not drafted. Of course, Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, but people that are unavailable or injured, not part of this at all, which I guess doesn't come as too much of a surprise when they weren't listed to begin with.
Yeah, also on the list, John Cena, thank you again. Tommaso Ciampa, Alexa Bliss, Aaliyah, Carmella, of course, Gable Steveson, Logan Paul, R-Truth, Robert Roode, and Shanky.
Yeah, well, the majority of those are injured, or in the case of Gable Steveson, I mean, he got drafted to win the U.S. Open over the weekend. So, I mean, he's trying to maybe draft himself back for another Olympic bid.